Ever get that, like, weird feeling that reality is, I don't know, maybe a little off? Like, what if, and hear me out, what if we're all in, like, a giant video game?
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
I know it sounds a little out there, but it's a serious idea.
Hmm.
I mean, the simulation hypothesis, the idea that our universe is like some kind of super advanced computer program, people like Elon Musk, even philosophers like Nick Bostrom are talking about it.
And for good reason. It really makes you think.
Exactly. And today we are going to deep dive into an article that jumps right into this. We're talking Confirmed, We Live in a Simulation by Fouad Khan, published in Scientific American.
Catchy title for sure.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it definitely grabs your attention. But to be clear, the article isn't saying, like, boom, here's your proof. It's more about looking at the simulation hypothesis from a new angle.
From what I've read, it seems like Khan is focusing on what we can actually observe in the universe.
Yeah, exactly. He's looking for those clues, like if we are in a simulation, what are the things that might give it away?
Well, one thing that really stands out in the article is how Khan tackles the way this simulation hypothesis has been approached in the past.
How so?
Well, a lot of the arguments have been kind of abstract, like these big philosophical debates or getting caught up in probabilities and statistics.
Yeah, it can get pretty heady.
Right. And Khan, he's pushing for something more concrete. He emphasizes the need for empirical evidence, actually looking at what we observe and asking, could this be a sign of a simulated reality?
So he's looking for hard evidence instead of just theories. Makes sense. But what kind of evidence is he talking about?
Well, he draws this really interesting analogy between the limits of computer processing power and something we see in our universe all the time, the speed of light.
The speed of light. Okay, now I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this analogy.
Okay, so think about it. Even the most powerful computer, it can only process information so fast, right?
Yeah.
There's a limit. And Khan argues that we might be seeing that same limit in our universe as the speed of light.
So you're saying that the speed of light might not be this like fundamental law of the universe, but more like a limitation of whatever system is running the simulation.
That's the idea. He
Yeah.
gives this example like, imagine a computer doing a simple subtraction problem. It doesn't matter if it's 10 minus 5 or a billion minus a million. It takes the computer the same amount of time, at least up to the limit of what that computer can handle.
Oh, I see. So it's like there's a set processing speed. Just like that computer, our simulated universe would have its own speed limit built in, and that's the speed of light.
Exactly. And no matter how far light travels, it always moves at that same speed.
Which is something that's puzzled scientists forever. But if you think about it as a processing limit of a simulation, it suddenly starts to click.
Right. It starts to make a lot more sense.
Okay, so then if we're thinking about the universe as this simulation and like space itself is essentially just code, then our perception of distance and scale, that could all be an illusion, right?
Whoa, yeah. Think about it. Those mind-blowingly huge distances between galaxies. Maybe it's not so different from the computer doing that subtraction problem.
So what we see as these massive, complex structures, they could be just a few lines of code in the simulation.
It makes you question everything, right? Like, what else about our reality might be a kind of illusion
Ah.
created by the limitations of the simulation? It's a wild thought.
It really is. Makes you wonder what other glitches in the matrix we might be missing.
When you start thinking about the universe as a simulation, it really makes you think about some pretty big questions, like free will. Do we actually have it?
Yeah, that's something philosophers have debated forever. But thinking about it in the context of a simulation really adds another layer to it, doesn't it? I mean, are we really making our own choices, or are we just following some pre-programmed script?
Khan actually gets into that in the article. And what's interesting is that he doesn't think the simulation hypothesis automatically rules out free will. He brings this idea of emergent properties.
Emergent properties. Now that's a new one. What are those?
So think about it like this. You have a system with some basic rules, right? And those rules, they interact with each other. And from that interaction, you get these complex and unexpected outcomes.
So even if there are these set rules to the simulation, the way they all play out could lead to like real choices and behavior that you couldn't predict.
Right. So even if we're living in this giant computer program, we still might have the ability to make our own decisions.
I don't know. It's kind of comforting. A little bit.
Definitely something to think about. But, I mean, it's important to remember we're still in the realm of hypothesis here. We're not saying this is definitely how it is, and it's going to be something people debate for a long time, I think.
True. But even just thinking about the possibility that we're living in a simulation, I feel like it forces us to re-examine like everything.
I think so. To step outside our normal ways of thinking and be open to these really different perspectives.
And maybe that's the whole point, right? Whether the simulation hypothesis is true or not, just exploring it can lead us to new ways of seeing things and new discoveries.
It really pushes us to question everything we thought we knew about the universe and our place in it.
So we've talked about speed of light and consciousness and free will. Pretty heavy stuff. Does Khan offer any conclusions from all of this speculation?
Well, he argues that even if we can't definitively prove the simulation hypothesis, it offers a pretty compelling explanation for some of the universe's biggest mysteries, the kinds of things traditional science hasn't been able to fully explain.
You're talking about the things we were talking about earlier, like consciousness and what space and time really are, and all those fundamental constants in physics.
Exactly. It may seem a little weird, even kind of scary, but it could give us this whole new framework for understanding these big questions.
Yeah.
It might even be the key to understanding reality itself.
Which leads to another big question. What does this mean for us regular folks just living our lives? Does it matter if we're in a simulation?
That's something Khan leaves open for the reader to think about. But honestly, I think even if it turns out that our reality is just this really advanced illusion, it's still the only reality we know.
Right, so we might as well embrace it, real or not. Our experiences, our relationships, the choices we make, they all still matter, even in a simulated world.
I think so. And who knows, maybe the very fact that we can even consider the simulation hypothesis is proof of how amazing our minds are. Simulated or not, shows how curious we are, how much we like to question things and push the boundaries of what we know.
This whole conversation has definitely given me a lot to think about. I know I'm going to be seeing the world in a whole new light now.
It's one of those ideas that once you've heard it, you can't really forget it. It really makes you wonder what else about our reality is different from how we see it. What else are we missing?
It's exciting and a little scary at the same time.
That's the beauty of it, right? It opens up all these possibilities, and it encourages us to never stop questioning things and exploring and searching for answers.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. Explored some pretty wild ideas about what reality is and the possibility that we could be living in a simulation. You know that analogy Khan uses about the speed of light being like a processing limit in the simulation. I keep thinking about it.
It is a good one. Really makes you think about how something we always thought of as this fundamental law of the universe could just be like an artifact of this system running the whole thing.
Right, like our computers have a speed limit for how fast they can process information. Maybe our universe does too, and that's the speed of light.
And maybe that's why nothing can go faster than light, not because there's something physically stopping it, but because it's just hard-coded into the fabric of the simulation.
Whoa. So then, what other laws of physics are just rules of the simulation?
Yeah, think about it. It really makes you wonder.
Okay, so let's go back to consciousness for a second. Khan suggests it could be like an interface for someone outside the simulation to experience our world.
Right. Like we're the avatars and someone else is having the experience through us.
But then why are we experiencing consciousness? Shouldn't it just be the player?
That's a good point. And Khan kind of touches on that. What if what we experience as consciousness is just a filtered version of what the observer is experiencing? Like they're getting the full HD reality and we're getting a simplified low-res version.
Haha, so they get the IMAX and we get the standard def. Kind of a bummer, but I guess if the point is to keep the simulation running smoothly, you wouldn't want to overload things with too much data.
Makes sense, right?
Okay.
Like in a video game, the main character is super detailed, but all the background stuff has to be simpler so the game doesn't crash.
Crazy to think our whole perception of reality could be so limited. Makes you wonder what else we're missing out on.
It really does. And it raises the question, if we are living in a simulation, is there a way to, break free, to experience that higher level of reality?
Imagine figuring out how to hack the simulation and see the universe as it really is.
That would be something.
But I guess for now, all we can do is keep asking questions and looking for clues.
Keep searching for those glitches in the matrix.
Exactly. I mean, even if we never prove it, the simulation hypothesis really makes you question everything about our perception and the limits of what we know. And it opens up all these possibilities. Maybe there are levels of reality we haven't even begun to imagine.
It really does make you think.
Well, I think it's safe to say that this deep dive has been, a real mind bender. We've explored some pretty wild ideas. Speed of light, consciousness, what is reality even,
And the possibility that it's all just a simulation.
Exactly. But I think the biggest takeaway here is that even if it's just a theory, It gives us a whole new way of looking at the universe and our place in it. It challenges us to question everything, to be open to the idea that reality might be way more complex and amazing than we ever thought.
And maybe someday we'll have the technology to finally figure it all out.
Until then, we can just keep exploring these mysteries, whether the universe is simulated or not. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the simulation hypothesis. We'll be back next time with another thought-provoking topic that's sure to blow your mind.